Let me start by defining genocide. Of course, the term comes from the Genocide Convention of 1948. The period that followed the Second World War was a period of great judicial creativity, and several categories of international crime were then launched, were defined, including genocide. The definitions of that reflected the time when they were adopted, and so they were all quite narrow in scope. The war crimes, for example, were confined to conflicts of an international nature. Crimes against humanity were restricted to acts carried out in association with an armed conflict. And genocide had the narrow definition of the convention that listed a series of acts, but it required that they be done with the intent to destroy the group. And the list of groups was also limited to national, ethnic, racial, or religious groups.
And the first thing I want to discuss about is the allegations themselves. As my colleagues have pointed out, there is a recent discovery of the remains of 215 children buried in Indigenous residential school in Canada. And what I draw from that incident, and what I would like to flag to everyone, is that any facility with movement, confinement or restriction and a power imbalance, it has an elevated risk of abuse. So this could be prison, detention facilities, immigration detention, for example, international or internally displaced persons camp, IDP camp, or it could be hospital, care home, boarding school, or even witness protection programs. So in situations like this, when there is an allegation of human rights abuse, they should be taken seriously and they shouldn't be dismissed out of hand, because if we learn anything from these historical examples, it would be that it's entirely plausible and it deserves more attention. Any claim that these can't be true is unhelpful, in my opinion. If we look closely at the very text of the Genocide Convention and look at the definition of genocide, it's theoretically possible to have a one-person genocide. It's very counterintuitive, but at the same time, there's actually no there's no requirement on the amount of victim in order for something to qualify as genocide. What we often see is a massacre, and that's how we get this intuition from. And the last issue is also kind of related to the evidence, is the use of human rights organization and NGOs report. For the purpose of my discussion, I would like to just assume all international organizations, UN agency or NGOs, they are non-partisan and they are neutral. But neutrality doesn't lend force to objectivity. Objective factors still exist and still could affect the relevance and probative value of their finding, even we don't analyze the neutrality of that organ. So what we're asking ourselves, in my opinion, is what would eventually affect the jurors' ability to verify the credibility and reliability of the evidence they're presented with? To answer that question, we will need to look into the methodology, and we will need to look into the source. So of this report, the methodology of this report, and this does not mean to be a criticism. I understand those organs are working, are constantly fighting an uphill battle, and I applaud them for what they do, and this is just my observations. Human rights and humanitarian investigations, when compared to forensic investigations, they are often less invasive and less proactive.